Hi folks, it's Michael again from Countryside. Today we're going to talk about pruning your rose bushes. So this time of year your roses are starting to come out of dormancy. So this is a great time to start pruning them. First I'm going to show you what we have when we grow our roses here at Countryside. We get them in as a bare root plant. And so they come to us as just a root and some sticks. And we planted them a couple weeks ago. We planted them in pot and we put them in a nice warm greenhouse and they're starting to pop already like this. So this is just a demonstration of how hard you can prune your roses down to if you really want to, and they will still come back and flush out. But you don't have to prune them as hard. Well, every rose situation is different. So we have a couple out here in front of our landscape office. I'm just going to show you real quick the basics of pruning roses. So at this time of year, you're going to see tiny little red nubs coming out on the roses. So this is some new growth coming out here. You can see on the nubs here. And then you can also see some of this back here is kind of whitish or brown or black. You can tell if it's brown or black like this, those things, that's dead. That's not going to be coming back at this point. So the easiest thing to do, first of all, is to prune anything that's white or green, black, or down to a point where it's green again. So you can prune out all this stuff that's white here, because it's not going to come back. You can prune it down to where you see a little bit of green. So this whole thing is going to come out like this. So that's some obvious pruning you can do like that. And now you kind of want to prune it to thin it out and to shape it. So you can see this is a shrub rose. So this is one that's kind of a spreading type rose anyway. But we want to keep it a little bit contained and growing into more of a bush type direction instead of just having it all crisscross over each other. So any branches that are kind of crisscrossing over each other like this, you want to cut off one of them. You don't want to have things crossing over each other as much as possible. So you can see like this one here in the middle. This one's heading out this way, like towards the inside of the plant. We don't want to have that. So we're going to trim out the stuff that's kind of going towards the inside of the plant. We want it to go a little more outwards. So I'm going to trim out some of these guys here. Some of the brown that's on there. And then you can see there's a couple of stems that are coming off way longer than the rest of them, like these guys here. We can trim those back. So when you come to a node like this, you see this new growth on here, this little node, you can see it's on this side of the branch. If I trim this right here, the new growth is going to come out this way, and that's what I want. I want it to grow outwards. If I trimmed it back here, you see this is a node here, it's going to kind of grow inwards towards the plant. I don't really want that. I want it to grow outwards. So I'm going to trim it over here, just above that node, so that this new growth is going to come shooting out this way. And then same thing down here. It's a little crowded down here. There's two things going on, so I'm going to trim back this whole branch here. Trim this back to where there's some new growth. Same thing here. I'm going to trim this back all the way down to this branch here, so it's coming outwards. And same thing with this shoot over here. This one's coming. I'm going to trim it back to here because this one's going to come outwards like this. And then all this little stuff in here, there's some more brown in here I'm going to trim off. And there's a couple little tiny, thin, skinny branches like this. You don't really want to have all that skinny branches in there. You can get a couple of those out of there. Just go ahead and get in there and trim out some of this stuff like that. And then, so we are good to go with this one. So again, it's going to grow out nice and evenly, more of like a bush form. And you want to kind of trim it to where it's kind of evenly shaped. Again, you don't want to have all the shoots shooting off all different directions. So this one here has been growing a couple weeks inside our greenhouse, and you see we trimmed it initially when we went to plant it. So this one's actually growing pretty nicely. So it's going to grow, this growth is coming this way, this one's going to shoot up this way, this guy's going to come out over this way. So it's going to form, a nice bush form like that. You can see like this one here, there's not much growth coming on it right now, so eventually we're going to have to trim this back. I can trim this back down to here and cut that off and have this new growth is going to come up this way then. If you have a situation where you have some hybrid tea roses, the difference in roses is this. When you have shrub roses, they're just going to be they're going to be shorter, they're going to have clusters of smaller flowers, and they bloom sporadically throughout the season. Hybrid tea roses are more of a larger type rose, like if somebody buys you a dozen roses, they're going to bloom, have a nice big flush of flowers, stop a little bit, and they might have another flush of flowers later in the season. Hybrid teas are bigger, beautiful, single roses on a stem. What happens, unfortunately, sometimes is the graft fails. This is a graft right here. It's a big knotty mass on top of the plant. So what they do is they graft this hybrid tea rose onto a rootstock of a hardy rose that's in our area. So sometimes if the graft fails, unfortunately you're going to have some growth coming out of your rose, but it's going to be underneath this graft. So if you see growth only coming from underneath this knot, unfortunately your top rose has died and that wild shrub rose has taken over. What's going to happen is you're going to have canes that shoot up 4 or 5 feet in the air and arch out and look nothing like the rose you had before, and they're not going to really have any flowers on them. People come in sometimes and ask, like, what happened to my rose? And I said, well, your graft unfortunately failed. So if you had done anything like, cover your roses with a cone or with our rose collars, this is the time of year you can just wipe away the soil from the rose, from the rose collars. Just wipe away the soil around the base. And if you had any cones or something like that, of course, take those off before we do any pruning. So roses do great with a couple rounds of some fertilizer. We do sell some products. Great time to fertilize would be sometime up here in April. A good shot of fertilizer, and usually like in late June, again, we're doing another shot of fertilizer on these guys. Gives you some nice flush of flowers, beautiful roses throughout the season. Well, thank you so much for the video today, for joining the video, and have a great day.